The room went silent when she asked me that question. The soft hum of the office air conditioner, the distant ringing phones, the faint clicking of keyboards outside her glass walls. Everything seemed to fade as my boss leaned back in her chair and looked at me with a half smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Is she prettier than I am?" My heart stopped, not because I had an answer, but because I suddenly realized I didn't understand the question. Before we begin, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet miracles that happen in ordinary lives, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this remind us that sometimes the biggest changes begin with the smallest words. My name is Nathan Cole, and this happened 3 years ago in Chicago, Illinois. At the time, I was 34, recently divorced, drowning in credit card debt, and trying to rebuild my life from the ground up. My ex-wife had left with most of our savings and a polite note saying she needed more. I didn't blame her entirely. I had spent years chasing stability instead of passion, security instead of dreams. Somewhere along the way, I'd become predictable, safe, invisible. I worked as a financial analyst at a mid-sized tech firm downtown, the kind of place with polished floors and framed mission statements about innovation and integrity, and at the top of it all was Victoria Hale. Victoria wasn't just the CEO. She was the kind of woman who commanded silence without raising her voice. Tall, composed, always dressed in elegant simplicity, she had sharp gray eyes that seemed to read between your sentences. She was respected, feared, admired, and, if I was honest, quietly intimidating. I had been working under her direct supervision for 6 months when it happened. 6 months of late nights, corrected spreadsheets, subtle nods of approval, and once, just once, a rare smile that lingered longer than professional courtesy required. That Friday afternoon, I had finally worked up the courage to leave at a reasonable hour. For the first time since my divorce, I had agreed to go on a date. Her name was Claire. We'd met through a mutual friend from church. She was kind, warm, and had a laugh that made you forget what you were worried about. It wasn't anything serious yet, just coffee and maybe dinner, but to me, it felt like stepping back into sunlight after a long winter. I knocked on Victoria's office door to let her know I'd be leaving early. I told myself it was courtesy. In truth, I always felt the need to explain myself to her. "I have a date tonight," I said, trying to sound casual. She looked up from her tablet slowly. That half smile appeared, and then she asked it. "Is she prettier than I am?" At first, I thought she was joking. I even let out a small, nervous laugh. But her eyes didn't move. They searched my face as if the answer carried more weight than it should. My throat went dry. I had never seen her like that. Not sharp, not authoritative, but almost vulnerable. I stumbled through a safe answer. I said something about how beauty wasn't a competition, how everyone was beautiful in different ways. It sounded rehearsed and hollow, even to me. She nodded slowly. "Have a nice evening, Nathan." I walked out of her office feeling unsettled, not flattered, not confused, just aware that something had shifted. That night, Claire met me at a small Italian restaurant near the river. The city lights reflected in the water, and for the first time in years, I felt light. She listened when I spoke. She asked questions. She didn't judge my past, she simply accepted it as part of the story. But somewhere between the appetizer and dessert, I found myself thinking about Victoria's question. Why would a woman like her ask something like that? Over the next few weeks, things at work subtly changed. Victoria called me into her office more often, not just for reports, but for opinions. She asked about my perspective on company culture, on leadership morale, on long-term strategy. It was as if she was trying to understand me beyond my spreadsheets. One evening, long after most employees had left, I stayed behind to finish a quarterly projection. I noticed her office light was still on. On impulse, I knocked. She looked tired. Not the polished executive version of tired, the human kind. We ended up talking, not about work, about life. She told me she had built the company from nothing after her father's failed business left their family bankrupt. She had spent her 20s proving she was strong, her 30s proving she was capable. Somewhere along the way, she stopped proving she could be loved. "Men don't approach women like me," she admitted quietly. "They admire from a distance, or they compete. No one sees me." I didn't know what to say, because in that moment I did see her. Not the CEO, not the polished public figure, just a woman who had sacrificed softness for survival. Meanwhile, my relationship with Claire was growing steadily. She wasn't dramatic, she wasn't mysterious, but she was consistent. She showed up. She prayed for me when I was stressed. She met my mother without trying to impress her. She made me feel safe. And yet, I could sense something unresolved at work. One Friday, Victoria asked me to stay after a board meeting. The tension in the room earlier had been thick. Investors were pressuring her to sell a significant portion of the company. It was the kind of decision that could change everything. When everyone left, she looked at me across the long conference table. "Do you think I'm hard to love?" she asked quietly. The question hit harder than the first one. I took a deep breath. I told her the truth. I said I thought she had built walls so high that no one knew how to climb them. That strength wasn't the problem. Isolation was. She didn't cry, she didn't break, but her expression softened in a way I had never seen before. That night, I drove home thinking about the two women in my life. One who had learned to survive alone, the other who chose to walk beside me even when I was at my lowest. A week later, Victoria called me into her office again. She told me she had decided not to sell. She was restructuring the company instead, investing in people instead of profits. Then she surprised me. She promoted me to senior financial director. "You reminded me that leadership isn't about being untouchable," she said. "It's about being human." I thanked her sincerely, and then I told her something she probably already knew. I told her I was planning to ask Claire to marry me. For a moment there was silence. Then she smiled, a real one this time. "I hope she's prettier than I am," she said softly, and this time I understood. She wasn't asking about beauty, she was asking if someone had finally seen me the way she had begun to see herself, as worthy of love beyond titles and accomplishments. Claire said yes 2 months later under a quiet oak tree in Lincoln Park. My promotion allowed me to pay off my debts. We built a life that wasn't flashy, but it was honest, full of Sunday dinners, late-night talks, and faith that second chances are real. Victoria remained my mentor. Months later, I heard she had started dating a nonprofit attorney named Marcus, someone who challenged her, but also made her laugh. Life doesn't always unfold the way we imagine. Sometimes the most unexpected questions reveal the deepest insecurities. Sometimes strength hides loneliness. And sometimes healing begins when someone dares to answer honestly. If this story touched your heart in any way, take a moment to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps these stories reach people who need them most. And before we end, I have a special request. Comment the word worthy if you believe that no matter your past, your position, or your pain, you deserve to be loved. Because in the end, it was never about who was prettier. It was about who was present, who was kind, who stayed. And sometimes that makes all the difference.